Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a visceral, genuinely eerie sensation that haunts us in our very own beds. You know the one, the hypnagogic jolt. It's this completely unsolved mystery of human biology that happens to almost every single person on Earth, usually when we're completely alone, in the dark, right as our brains are supposed to be shutting down.
So picture this. You're finally drifting off, and suddenly, boom, you feel this absolute terror of plummeting through an endless void. Or maybe you feel like you just missed a step on a staircase. It's a vivid image reported by people across literally every culture on Earth. And get this, there's absolutely no shared folklore origin for it. We've all been there, right? But it begs the question, why on earth does the brain subject us to such absolute terror right at the exact moment we're trying to get some rest?
A lot of people describe this hypnagogic transition less like a simple muscle twitch, and honestly, more like the terrifying sensation of stepping into thin air in the dark. Or, even more unsettling, being violently shoved out of bed. It triggers this intense, totally inexplicable dread, which is immediately followed by an aggressive shock to your entire nervous system.
And look at this number. This bizarre glitch is universally documented in a staggering 93% of adults. It doesn't matter where you're from. And for 10% of us, it happens every single day. So despite how isolating and terrifying it feels at 2 in the morning, it's a nearly universal human phenomenon. Now, to strip away the mystery for just a second, sleep researchers clinically define this physical event as a hypnic jerk or a myoclonic spasm. It happens during the non-rapid eye movement sleep cycle, basically right as you're crossing that threshold from wakefulness into sleep. Physically speaking, it actually strongly resembles the sudden jump your body makes when someone sneaks up and startles you from behind.
But here's the thing. It's not just a muscle twitch. It brings this whole avalanche of bizarre sensory symptoms. We're talking visual flashes, a loud internal crack, but here is where it gets truly strange. In an unpublished appendix by sleep pioneer Nathaniel Kleitman, whose raw transcripts are actually kept at the Regenstein Library Special Collections, he flagged a very specific subset of cases, 14% to be exact. These subjects reported the sensation not of falling, but of being distinctly pushed, a distinction Kleitman himself noted as being behaviourally inconsistent with just a simple reflex.
Section 1. A century of sleep science.
If we trace this back over the centuries, we go from early physicians all the way to the groundbreaking discovery of REM sleep. It was specifically in Kleitman's 1957 University of Chicago Sleep Lab studies where we first see the systematic cross-referencing of these strange, raw subject transcripts. Kleitman and his students really opened up an entirely new world here, realizing that sleep wasn't just this passive state, but an incredibly active, highly cognitive process.
But you know, this raw sensory dread, it's been systematically recorded since way back in 1796. Writing in his medical text Zoonomia, early observer Erasmus Darwin actually noted how this disagreeable sensation forcibly snaps the brain back into conscious volition. So even over 200 years ago, scientists recognized there was this terrifying internal conflict happening in the dark during the onset of sleep.
Section 2. Anatomy of a glitch. Today, modern neuroimaging gives us some incredible clues about the high-level cerebral activity happening during this really vulnerable transition. Research from institutions like the University of Geneva shows us that during sleep, the brain is absolutely not just quiet. It's flooded with specific regional activity, memory consolidation, and emotional processing. It's basically like a complex orchestra where different sections are powering down at completely different speeds. So during this twilight state, your conscious brain knows perfectly well you're safe in bed, but your transitioning brain, it acts as a totally unreliable narrator. Without input from the outside world, your mind starts to literally hallucinate. But the biology runs way deeper than just a simple hallucination. Check this out. A 1994 replication by neurologist Oliver Sacks at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, which was published in the Journal of Consciousness Studies, found something wild. Subjects experiencing that pushed variant showed a statistically anomalous delay in cortisol normalization after waking up. That is a chemical signature of true trauma, and it's something the standard sleep literature simply cannot address.
Let's look at some of the triggers we face every single day. Things like late-night caffeine, a worried mind, or extreme physical fatigue. They can throw this delicate neurological transition mechanism into total chaos. When you're super stressed or sleep-deprived, your brain really struggles to smoothly hand over the reins from wakefulness to sleep. And actually,
Just worrying about experiencing a hypnic jerk can create this terrible positive feedback loop of anxiety, which makes the jerks even more likely to happen. When you look at the literal functional neuroanatomy, you see certain executive regions shutting down while emotional centers light up. But what makes this truly haunting are the raw EEG traces held at the Columbia University Medical Archive. These have never been fully published, by the way. They show a profound anomaly. They show a brain whose logic center, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, is quite literally offline, while the amygdala, your fear center, is just screaming in absolute terror. Because the brain is losing its grip on the outside world, it frantically fabricates a terrifying story to explain the sudden physical jolt. It's so fascinating. You aren't actually jolting awake because you dreamt you were falling. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. Your body twitched first. Then, your transitioning brain quickly painted a picture of a cliff edge or a misstep to make sense of that sudden movement after the fact.
Section 3. Echoes of our primate past.
Now, if this were just a random spasm, we have to wonder, why in the world would the human body evolve an alarm system that violently interrupts its own necessary rest? From an evolutionary perspective, our bodies are these finely tuned survival machines. A terrifying glitch that disrupts vital sleep doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Unless, of course, it was once a feature rather than a bug.
Which brings us to a frankly chilling evolutionary theory. Your brain is misinterpreting muscle relaxation as a fatal plunge from the tree canopy. Researchers suggest that as we drift off, the sudden lack of muscle tension sends a panic signal to the primitive parts of our brain. But this is exactly what makes the mystery so unsolved. If falling is just a universal evolutionary trait to save a primate from the trees, why do 14% of people consistently feel shoved by an unseen presence?
The feeling of falling is literally a ghost reflex from our evolutionary past. It's a desperate survival mechanism firing millions of years too late. Back when our ancestors slept in trees, waking up with a sudden jolt to readjust your position could literally mean the difference between life and a fatal fall. So as we wrap up this explainer, the next time you jerk awake in a cold sweat, you're left with a pretty terrifying reality. Neuroscience can explain the muscle spasm, sure, but it still cannot fully account for why, for a measurable subset of us, something in that transition feels less like falling and a lot more like being shoved. So, are you really alone in the dark? Thanks for joining us today, and sleep tight.